Welcome back to the Nebraska Football Show. I'm Tim Verghese, joined by Steve Marik. Steve, it's the first day or first days of fall. Feels like it for sure outside. I'm excited about it. I'm excited for cooler weather, getting the sweaters on at the games, and having getting to layer up a little bit. Kind of what has you excited about the fall?
The weather, just like you were talking about, Tim. I am a quarter zip guy. If I had my way, I'd be wearing a quarter zip like every day of the week, just because it eliminates, decisions that I have to make on a daily basis. But I'm just glad that football weather is starting to find our way right now, and so yeah, we'll see what West Lafayette this Saturday brings.
Yeah, I'm hoping we stick in this weather for a bit. I'm really hoping we just get a couple of weeks of just pleasant weather. But the last day of seriously hot weather was Friday. We felt it in the press box as we watched Nebraska suffer their first loss of the season to Illinois. Steve, having a couple of days to kind of sit on it and just reflect on what we saw. I think you and I are a little more just generally level-headed on what we saw, just compared to kind of some other commentary and things just from the game. But I guess for you specifically, kind of what's on your mind? Like, what are you thinking about? What are some lingering, I guess, concerns and thoughts for you coming out of the loss?
Well, there's a lot of ways that we could go with this, and we'll touch on a few in this podcast. But for me, I mean, look, everything about Friday was almost like very surprising to me. The way Illinois ran the ball, the way Nebraska did not run the ball, and I think Nebraska's lack of a rushing attack was something that surprised me a lot on Friday. I went into the game thinking that Nebraska was going to be the tougher team on the line of scrimmage. I went into the game thinking Nebraska was going to have a better rushing attack out of the two, and neither happened. Illinois was more physical up front. Their offensive line had its way with Nebraska's defensive line. That was surprising, and I think Illinois' defensive front kind of had its way with Nebraska's offensive line, especially in that run game. Nebraska just could not run the ball in the second half, and that led to Marcus Satterfield kind of relying on Dylan Raiola's right arm, which again, I mean that it's shown to be pretty fruitful, pretty successful, and I think Dylan kind of showed that he can handle something like that. So that's exciting for Husker fans. But what's not exciting is Nebraska's inability to kind of move the ball, move the chains on the ground. So that to me is the most surprising part. When we're talking about what kind of shocked you, what caught your attention in that game. What about you, Tim?
Yeah, the running offense specifically, I think it's starting to become an issue for me as well. I think on the other side as well, just again on both sides of the ball right now, just how again like just the holes that opened up late defensively, like for Illinois, like Illinois was able to kind of just gash Nebraska late. I don't think Nebraska does a very good job of setting the edge right now. I think teams can get to the edge. And even not just as not just running backs, but you're seeing quarterbacks, especially the last 2 weeks kind of be able to move horizontally and create some extra time for their receivers downfield, and they're profiting off of that. And Nebraska just isn't able to keep quarterbacks in the pocket. Nebraska isn't able to again prevent outside runs right now, and I think they find themselves out of position for a couple of different reasons, whether that's just combo blocks and Nash and tie, and then banking on the rest of the linemen to kind of hold their own in one-on-one blocks against everybody else. Just trusting that, I think Nebraska's scheme, just like as complex as it is and as many different looks as it gives offenses, at the same time, it does put you out of position at times against the run where, you're a gap or two away. And you know what I mean? And so it's like, okay, John Bullock's got to chase down, he's got to really come across three blocks to even be in position to make a play. That isn't ideal. And so I'm curious to see what changes. I wonder a little bit like, hey, is this a shift to a different base defense that's affecting them? Because they didn't have these issues against the run last year, especially down the stretch. And obviously, it's early in the year. Maybe this is just another instance of this defense just gets comfortable and hot as the year goes on. They had a couple early weeks to build some confidence, faces some two tough punches to the mouth, and I think you and I remember we talked about Northern Iowa and how concerned we were with the run defense back then. And we also came back to the fact that, hey, at the end of the day, they only let up 3 points. They didn't let up
Mhm.
3 points on Friday night, and
Mhm.
that's a real concern. And I just think as a program right now, specifically as a defense, I think they really need to just get back to the drawing board a little bit and reevaluate what they're doing. Because I mean, I would even say this too. I don't necessarily love what they're doing against the pass either right now. I do think there's like I think Sierra Wright was filled in like as well as he could for Tommy
Mhm.
Hill, and obviously the loss of Tommy Hill was felt, but like I don't think the safeties, have done a great job just kind of sticking to their assignments. I think they've had bad eyes at times. Misdirection kind of got to them. You kind of saw it this last week. Um, I think some of these the way Illinois confused them with just different looks, hiding tight ends, hiding eligible receivers, changing out personnel. It really got to them. And you'd think for a defense that goes up against the offense that they do every week in practice, with how much Nebraska changes their own personnel, the type of quarterback Dylan Raiola is, you would think they'd be better equipped for things like that, but they're not. And I'm really interested to see how that changes. They have a nice opportunity here this week against Purdue. I think that's an opportunity to kind of bit of a get right game as close as you can get in the conference for Nebraska. But I think defensively, it's still going to be a test. I guess looking ahead to this upcoming week in West Lafayette, first road game, kind of what are your thoughts? What are you feeling?
Yeah, I really don't think that it sat well with Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield that they just couldn't move the ball on the ground and they weren't the more physical team up front. And again, they were without their starting right guard and kind of road grader in Micah Mizuka, who it sounds like is in the doghouse or he's just working through some things as Matt Rule has said. We don't know what those things are. He's keeping that close to the vest, but um, Micah Mizuka not being on the offensive line is hurting that run game. It definitely is because I don't think for as good of a backup that Henry Lutovsky has shown that he can be in his career, he's not Micah Mizuka. He doesn't bring the run blocking that Micah does. So the sooner that Micah Mizuka can find his way back to the starting lineup, the better. I totally agree with your points, Tim, about Illinois just having a good game plan. Credit to Barry Lunny Jr., the offensive coordinator for Illinois. He
Oh,
found a
they had
way.
answers. They had answers
Yeah,
pretty much
they did.
all day.
They had a good game plan, and that game plan, Tim, you said it was taking that Nash Hutmacher and Ty Robinson, kind of negating them from the play and having other guys make the play. And so if you take out the middle of Nebraska's defense, who do you have on the edges? You have Jamari Butler at defensive end. You have those Jack linebackers, MJ Sherman, Princewell, Uman Mielen. Those guys were getting moved on the edge. Those outside runs that Illinois was hitting on, those were because, in my opinion, in my untrained eye, guys like MJ Sherman and Princewell were getting moved. Jamari Butler was not disengaging from blocks on his offensive tackles, and there were just some big holes to run through for Caden Fegan and company. And again, the job that Barry Lunny was doing, devising like creating a game plan that had the middle linebackers, John Bullock, Makai Bear, they didn't know where to look. They were taking false steps in a different way. They were taking false steps one way and the ball was going the other way. It was even affecting the safeties. Deshaun Singleton got burned one time on a fourth quarter run, and it really hurt the defense. So, I mean, I think it was a very good game plan from Barry Lundy Jr., the OC. So, yeah, but going into this Purdue game, I still want to see the ground game. For as good as Dylan Raiola has been, the best friend of a quarterback is a run game. And if they can get that traditional handoff game going again, give the ball to Dante Dowdell. Maybe this is a 20 to 25 carry type game for Dante Dowdell. Also, if they don't want to give Dante that much of a workload, how much do we see with Emmett Johnson? Because I thought Emmett Johnson has continued to show some really good things when he gets the ball. Ramir Johnson has like added a quickness element to his game as well as he's grown into a 6-year guy. So, Nebraska has options at ball carriers here, but I really want to see that offensive line kind of hunker down and move the ball on the ground, and that's just going to help Dylan too. So the offensive line, the line of scrimmage is where I'm really going to be looking at a Saturday at Purdue.
Yeah, I wonder what game two and a full week of prep for Gunnar Gatula looks like and how much, how
Oh
much
yeah.
more comfortable he looks. Because I am
Yep.
bullish on him long term, but just it is kind of being thrown into action a little bit this year, maybe a year ahead of what he wanted to be or what the coaches had in mind for him. But curious if another game works for him. Again, I do believe I'm not as concerned about the run game just yet, just because the up in the air status about Micah Mazuka, and again, like what we saw when he's there, I think there were a lot of concerns I think about Deontay Dowdell's vision on Friday night, and I kind of attribute that just from watching it again. He's kind of assuming the middle's going to be open because in previous weeks, running behind Ben Scott and Micah Mazuka was always there. There was always a lane there, and there just isn't right now. And so I wonder, when Micah comes back to the starting lineup, do those start to open up again? Is Nebraska able to have success again? That's kind of just wait and see for me. But as a unit overall, yeah, I want to see improvement from Gunner. And this is a defense you should be able to run on.
Yeah.
I think Nebraska is going to be able to have some success on the ground. If they're not, I think that raises serious alarm bells and serious concerns because every other team that's played Illinois, play Purdue has been able to run on them. And if Nebraska isn't, I'd start to get a little concerned, especially because of they've got a solid stable of backs in my opinion. They've got a group I think can be effective. But at some point or another, it's got to shine through. For me personally, I think this week, I think I'm just looking to see improvement from the defense. I do think Nebraska's offense is going to be able to move the ball, whether it's through the air or on the ground. I think they're going to be able to move the ball a good bit. I do think they covered the spread this week, but this isn't an offense that's going to let them just sit back and kind of coast through a game like they did the first couple of weeks, and this also isn't a defense that they can pin their ears back after the quarterback and just let guys sit in coverage because there's some talented receivers here. There's the guys that haven't really produced just yet, but they're talented receivers. There's some talent on the offense. Hudson Card kind of fits. It's a similar quarterback to the ones Nebraska's played the last 2 weeks. Guys that can move a little bit, guys that can extend plays. What we've noticed the last 2 weeks specifically, I think, is when Nebraska's defense is forced to move laterally and cover ground laterally, specifically quarterbacks. They just can't. It's just and again, that's really surprising considering who they practice against. Dylan Raiola, like that's a guy who things start to open up for him when things do go off script. And you would think the defense would be used to that by now. But again, you saw that with Luke Altmaier. He was able to kind of roll out a little bit, kind of take his time with it, step up in the pocket and make some throws. And really take advantage of just like slight openings in the defense. So I wonder what adjustments we see defensively, just again against what's going to be a bit of a tough test, but one that Nebraska should be able to handle. I'm really curious there. And again, like another game for Sierra, right? I think Matt Rule mentioned Tommy Hill's day to day, but
Yep.
I'm assuming I don't think they're going to rush him back, specifically what that injury is. I don't think we see him on Saturday. I think we see Tommy Hill out there again. Or I mean, Sierra Wright out there again. So does Hudson Card try to pick on Sierra? How does Sierra react to that? Like is
Yeah.
he because we've seen progress and seen a guy that looks a bit different than the guy we saw at USC last year.
Hmm.
But how far has he come along? Can he tackle in space? Can he hold his own in coverage when things go wrong? Is he
Hmm.
mentally tough? Like I want to see those things because he's going to be out there pretty much on an island, with and so I'm excited to see kind of what he does with the opportunity, whether Nebraska rotates a little more defensively. I'm really just looking for changes. I'm looking for adjustments, and I'm curious to see what Tony White does after the week he just had because I think this is the first really since last year against Michigan. This is the first time I think there's been some real kind of concern with Tony White and his unit.
And we heard it after the game. Like Matt Rule, like the tone of his voice was usually we like hear him and he's like uppity and he's like energetic and stuff. He sounded after that loss, he sounded like it stung. Like everybody in that room who talked in the post game press conferences sounded like that loss stung them, hurt them. That locker room had to be a pretty quiet place, I think, with some leaders like Marquise Buford kind of speaking up, Jamari Butler speaking up, even though Butler has been kind of limited the past 2 weeks. But yeah, I mean, I think that loss was felt, and I think it's going to create a lot of it's like, hey, back against the wall. What do we got? Let's go on the road for the first time this season and play a team that doesn't have a very good record, but we don't care about that. Let's just go and win this day and get out of the West Lafayette 1-0. So, I think this is where Matt Rule shines. He's gonna have the guys ready to play. And it's gonna be really kind of interesting to see, like you said, Tim, how what adjustments are made. Does the defense look different at points? What does the offense look like? Who's out there? Gunnar Gatula, when I was talking about Nebraska getting its run game going, I failed to mention, yeah, Nebraska's going to have a new left tackle out there, Gunnar Gatula, redshirt freshman, likely getting the start. So that's going to be something to watch as well. You didn't really notice Gunnar out there, which in terms of an offensive lineman when he was inserted, that's a good thing. Until that overtime period where he got flagged for a false start, very first play of the overtime period. So, and then Illinois, they played a TE stunt and gets the sack on Dylan Raiola on second down and 15, creating just a third and incredible. So it's
Third and 42.
that's just kind of crazy to say out loud and hear that number. But Tim, when you're looking at this Purdue game, let's focus individually on Purdue's team. Who catches your eye when you're kind of talking Purdue football? Who is somebody that the fans should maybe keep an eye on and know about?
Yeah, I think we'll start offensively just because I think that's a unit that's going to give Nebraska a little more trouble. Devin Mockabee, that's a name I think is a bit familiar to Nebraska fans. They're well aware, I think, of what he can do. And another back that's going to test this defense. The lead back for Purdue this year, I want to say, let me pull up the numbers real quick. He's averaging over 7.7 yards per carry.
Mhm.
Can Nebraska reduce that? Can they hold him something underneath that? So want to see how they respond to that. Another big back that's going to run through contact, run into contact. Again, in Nebraska, they want to be this best unit in the country. I think that is pretty much off the table at this point. But can you get back to at least top in the Big Ten? And can you show you're taking steps towards getting there on Saturday against Maccabee? Kind of who you on offense? Who you looking at?
Yeah, just to add a little context on Devin Crazy Legs Mockabee. So Husker fans 2 seasons ago, like you said, Tim, they'll remember him. He 2 seasons ago, when Purdue beat Nebraska 43-37. Maccabee rushed for 178 yards and a touchdown. He was averaging close to 6 yards per pop in that game. Now, Nebraska got the win last year against Purdue and held Maccabee in check. So, that's a good pick. They're going to try to get that run game going too, even though they're not kind of known for that with Graham Harrell's offense and everything. But Graham has been known to kind of run it more than his former coach Mike Leach did with that air raid system. It's his own brand of air raid, as everybody kind of has.
Graham's
But
really evolved. I'm proud of
yeah,
Graham,
oh yeah.
like he's been
Hmm.
around this game for so long, and it's like I remember being a kid and being like, "Oh, Graham Harrell, here we go, air raid," and then he's
Yeah,
bounced around a good bit, kind of settled in here at Purdue, and I don't know how much longer he's got there. I just that coaching staff, I don't know how much longer they have there, but
for
he's
sure.
evolved a bit, and I'm kind of proud of just that evolution and that commitment to the run game.
Yeah. So for me, offensively, with Purdue, I love Max Clare, the tight end. He's a very versatile guy. He's 6'4", 240 pounds. He has battled some injuries in his career. He didn't really get going last year because of injuries. But this season he has 10 catches, 153 yards, 2 touchdowns. I just love the way they use him. He's not as big as Thomas Fidone, but he does Thomas Fidone type things. He runs routes very well for a big guy. You can play him in the slot, which he is very comfortable in. They're going to give him some quick throws, quick outs, quick. They're even throw some screens to him, and he can be a blocker in the wide receiver screen game too. So you have like a 6'4", 240-pound guy who's like out on the edge, and he's blocking a slot corner and giving his teammate some room to run. So he's basically like a bigger Janiron Bonner if I had to compare him to somebody on Nebraska's roster, kind of like a do everything, bigger body guy with some receiving skills and blocking skills. So Max Clare, he's one to pick up, one to know for Husker fans. But Tim, what about let's go shift over to the defense here. Do you have a defensive guy for Purdue that people need to keep an eye on?
Yeah, I'm as a recruiting junkie, there's a lot of names on this defensive depth chart that you look up and down and you watch them and you're like, "Oh, I remember him. I remember
Yeah,
him." Jeffrey Emba is a guy I covered when I was covering Michigan because at the time it was a Michigan Auburn battle. He went to Auburn, ended up transferring, he's now at Purdue. But he's a guy I know. The younger Kalafdis is George Kalafdis' little brother.
Johnny.
Yeah, they've got a couple of Georgia transfers on this team. Guys that would again, if you follow recruiting, these are names you're familiar with. They've got a little freshman corner, Terry and Grant, that reclassified, was in a big recruiting battle, but Purdue won out. It was a big win for Ryan Walters.
Mhm.
But I'm going to go with a name a little bit off the traditional, I guess, recruiting radar. Will Helt, 6'6", defensive end out of Indianapolis. He's a second-year player for them, has 2.5 sacks on the year already. Again, they've not been very good against the run, but as a team, they've been able to get after the quarterback a little bit, a couple different guys.
Mhm.
And Will's one of them, and so I'm excited to see him, just how Nebraska matches up with that 6'6" coming off the edge. I don't know if that's going to be on Gunner or it's going to be on Bryce Bernard, but it's a good test off the end. A guy with good length. Wherever he lines up, I think Nebraska's O line has to account for him. And yeah, I'm a bigger fan of that front than I am with that back half, just because I think there's some names in that back seven, but they haven't really gelled just yet this season.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I remember just watching some of their early season games, and Will he really kind of stood out to me. Just his frame and him coming off the edge and being that long body. That's something to watch for sure, especially with a fresh left tackle likely starting the game. But for me, I really like Dylan Tiedemann. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that last name wrong, but he was a freshman All-American last year as a safety. He's a family like uh, Purdue football runs in his family's blood. His brother played there. Now it's his turn and he's doing really good. But my pick is going to be a guy who I think we're going to hear a lot of his name on Saturday, Kydron Jenkins. Kydron Jenkins is leading the team with 27 tackles, 5.5 for loss, and then 3.5 sacks. In his career, Kydron Jenkins has been mostly used as an outside linebacker, kind of like that bigger body linebacker on the edge in a 3-4 defense. But this year, he has a position switch and he's been playing a lot of inside linebackers. So that's a big inside linebacker at 6'1", almost 260 pounds. But he flies around. He's a powerful dude. He wreaked havoc. Him and Nick Scourton last year in the game against Nebraska just were absolute nightmares for Nebraska's offensive line. It was just almost kind of comical how badly they were hurting Nebraska last year. But of course, the Huskers got out of there with the win. But yeah, Kydron Jenkins is my pick. I think he's going to be everywhere. He's going to be a handful for Nebraska's offensive line in the middle, just because he's a dude. I think he's a future NFL guy.
Yeah, and we mentioned again like that this secondary. There's some names out there. We mentioned Terry and Grant. Mentioned a couple of the guys in this unit, but they through how many games is it? 4 games for them that they've played. Zero
They're
interceptions.
2-1. They're 2-1.
2-1. So through three
No,
games
one
for
and two.
them.
My bad. 1-2. 1-2.
1 and 2, yes, but no interceptions, and that's a bit of a concern, and I think before we get out of here, just kind of touching on Purdue and just what they are coming in, and just the two different situations right now. Nebraska's coming off a 3-1 start, a tough Friday night loss, but they did have that extra day and that full weekend kind of to recover and practice, and they've got a full week to prep. Purdue, on the other hand, coming off back-to-back losses, a real tough one to Notre Dame that Ryan Walters said he had circled on his calendar, and then even if you read around people at Purdue, it was a loss for them that there was like, hey, they had this circle on the calendar, and it was maybe the worst effort we've seen under the Walters staff.
Mm-hmm.
And they turn around and lose to Oregon State the week after. And they had to, I believe, they had to travel to Corvallis. They didn't get back into town until Sunday, late Sunday. So they pretty much lost a full day of recovery as well, pretty much just traveling. And so they're working with a short week while Nebraska has that extra day. Again, first road test for Nebraska. I guess in that
Mm-hmm.
sense, what are you looking to see? It's going to be the first road game for Dylan Raiola, first real road game for this team this year. What are you looking to see from Nebraska overall this week?
The first thing that comes to mind is to get off to a good start. Punch them in the mouth before they punch you in the mouth and go from there. That's what I say. And I keep going back to the run game. The run game is a quarterback's best friend. I know Dylan has looked extremely comfortable this year, and he's operated the 2-minute drill excellently. And it's been really fun to watch. But again, I keep going back to that run game. Get that run game going. And if it's going to be offensive line that does not include Micah Mizuka and does not include Turner Corcoran, which I think we already know it's not going to include Turner Corcoran. It's going to be kind of a question mark. Are they going to get that run game going, or are they going to rely on Dylan Raiola's arm, which again, like I said before, it's been good. He's looked great. There's not a lot to complain about with Dylan Raiola so far. So off to a hot start. 3-and-out with the defense, and then go down and put points on the board in the first possession for the offense, something like that.
I got you. Yeah. Similar for me. I just want to see again, just defensive. I want to see what adjustments they've made. Because again, I do think offensively they're going to be able to have some success. I would say I would get very concerned. I think I mentioned it earlier today already, but I would get a little concerned if they aren't able to establish the run against this defense just because of the success other teams have had establishing the run. And then on the other side of the ball, I just want to see again adjustments that Tony White's made. Kind of do we see any personnel changes in the back end? The starters look the same, at least on paper, but we know, how different the paper is versus what we see out there. Um,
The depth chart thing with some of the people in the fan base is just like killing me. Like
Listen, and I get it. I mean, we had this conversation all through the summers. Like, I get you want to know who the starter is, but this staff just understand there's just no such thing as like a true outside of a couple positions. Obviously, there's no such thing as a true established starter. They rotate so much and they play so many different bodies. But I guess one thing, and we can close out with this. I wonder if we see Sua.
Yeah,
I would like to
yeah,
see another body there on the interior, with Riley Van Poppel headed for a red shirt. And, we've seen Vincent Jackson out there. We've seen Keona Davis out there. We've seen a couple guys out there, but, Sua seems to be getting back into form, seems to be right. And the staff seems really excited about him. So I wonder if we see him out there on Saturday.
Yeah, Rule was just kind of snuck that in there during kind of a long-winded answer, which he's kind of known for. But he did slip in there. Sua Lefotu is finally healthy and he's back at practice. And Rule seemed generally excited for what Lefotu can bring. So Sua redshirt last year. He's a redshirt freshman right now, 6'3". He's dropped some weight from when he came into the program, and that's something that after the spring game. He said that he wanted to do just because he felt, believe it or not, dropping weight, he felt faster and stronger actually at that lower weight. So yeah, maybe he starts digging into some of Vincent Jackson's snaps behind Nash Hutmacher because, Tim, what have you thought about Vincent Jackson? Just real quick. I know we got about 7 minutes, but what have you thought about Vincent Jackson? I've kind of wanted to see more from him and he's still a young guy and he's developing and everything, but at times I think he's gotten pushed around and everything. But so maybe that's something where Sua Lefotu can come in and maybe show what he's got and help out this defensive front.
Yeah, it's we kind of touched on it in the press box, but yeah, Vincent, it's he's young. You can tell
Yeah,
he's
he's
young,
young, and I hate to
and
sound. I don't want to be say that he can't play or anything. He's just a young guy, and he's got a lot to learn.
right.
And he's a young guy,
And really right now it just feels like a matter of just learning leverage right now and learning certain things and just learning how to navigate all of that right now because it's like there's clearly some body strength there. There's
sure.
clearly, like a D1 player in there.
Hmm.
But it's times where it's like they sub off Nash and Ty and he
Hmm.
comes out there and it's just like that like you can run at Vincent
Hmm.
Jackson potentially. Like it's getting to that point where it's like, and I understand what the plan is with Riley Van Poppel and why this is
Yep.
better for the long term. But in moments like that, it's like you kind of wish it was Van Poppel out there and not Jackson.
100%.
But I completely understand what they're doing. I understand what they're trying to do. Just in terms of taking the long term approach and the short term approach. But in situations like on Friday night, it's yeah, you would have liked to have another body on the interior. You could throw at least rotate in there to give them something of a different look. And maybe that's Sua, a guy that's a little smaller, can get underneath some pads. Can kind of hold his own against the combo blocks and can two back gap a little bit. Has played up some high level of competition coming out of St. John Bosco.
Yeah.
So just want to see if we see him out there and just in general, again, what we see from that front, how much improvement we see, I guess, on Saturday.
Yeah, and another guy that Rule mentioned a few weeks ago, but and we'll ask Rule about this on Thursday, but Javen Wright, the inside linebacker who is dealing with a medical condition right now. He has unfortunately a history of blood clots in his life. So hopefully Javen Wright, everything from what we've been told by Matt Rule everything has gone according to plan with Javen and his off-field stuff. So maybe Rule mentioned that Purdue might have been the aiming point for his return. So we'll see if Javen Wright can maybe step back on the field, and we'll see what he's looking like. Now it's obviously going to be kind of hard if he hasn't been practicing and it's asking a lot to step on the field and play football after not practicing for a while. But we'll get more information from Rule on that on Thursday. But that's another kind of piece that would really help out the defense, I think, once he's good and ready to come back full force.
Oh yeah, like again, I'm just trying to think right now. Like imagine having Javen's length out there against the kind of the
Yeah.
RPO looks they saw, where it's like,
Oh yeah.
okay, they're trying to put those linebackers in, and they were trying to put the linebackers in conflict with those little slants off the RPOs, and when you've got like John Bullock or Mekhi Bear just like standing there, at least with Javen Wright, it's like, hey, that's 6'3", 6'4", lengthy arms. Put your hand up out there, like that. All of a sudden, they could eliminate a window. Would have liked to have his length out there. And
Mhm.
again on Saturday with the tight ends that. Purdue has.
Yeah.
I would like to see Javen kind of matched up on him rather than a John Bullock or a Mekhi Bear. As good as those two have been this year in certain spots, you would like to have some length at linebacker.
Yeah, Javen Wright at 6'5", 230, he would match up perfectly. He would be a perfect guy to put on Max Clare. So, just hopefully that Nebraska gets Javen Wright back and he's all good and everything off the field, and we hope for the best for Javen Wright. But you're absolutely right. What he brings, not only as a run defender, but in pass coverage because of his background as a defensive back, I mean, that's just awesome to have on the defense. So when he's not out there, you kind of feel it.
For sure. But that'll do it for us. We'll have more obviously this week over at InsideNebraska.com and over at the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel. We'll have bold predictions on Thursday for the game. And we'll have obviously recruiting blitz is already up when you're listening to this. And all of our rapid recap will be up from Tuesday's press conference. Rapid recap from Saturday's game should be out as well. But other than that, that'll do it for us. Be sure to like and subscribe. Check out our written work over at InsideNebraska.com. Steve, before we get any last thoughts before we put an end to this thing?
I think it's going to feel really good for everybody involved if Nebraska can get out of West Lafayette with a win. If they don't, you know, everybody kind of felt like the sky is falling with a loss to Illinois. I mean, that's just going to continue to snowball down the hill, and nobody's going to really feel really good about
Yeah.
themselves. So
There's some alarm
hopefully
bells
they,
right now. There's some alarm bells ringing right now. I think
yes,
if Saturday and they come out on the losing end on Saturday, I think you're going to start to see some serious alarm bells start to be raised. But again,
yeah,
as of right now, I don't
it's
think
like if they lose on Saturday, it's like you hear the alarm bells and they lose, then it's like okay, now we have to evacuate the apartment at like 2 a.m. and figure out what the hell's going on.
right, right. So here's hoping it doesn't come to that, just because I don't think it's going to come to that. I do
No, I
think.
think Nebraska will win too.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think these are two different programs heading in two different directions right now. And,
Mhm.
and so I think that benefits Nebraska. I think they're going to come out energized. I trust this staff. I trust this team. Just from what we've seen. Again, just the talk again after they were dejected and it felt like a
Yes.
shot after that
Mhm.
loss, but there was still that, hey, we're still together. We're still a
Mhm.
unit, and we're still going to bounce back. Like it didn't feel from the team perspective like the sky was falling. It felt like they got a bit of a wake up call. They just got to
Yep.
bounce back from it. And I think the internal messaging is still strong. I think the internal culture is still strong. And this team goes as Dylan Raiola goes. And I think he's built
Yeah.
some much needed confidence the last 4 weeks. That last two drives or so against uh Illinois side, he's built some good confidence. So I'm excited to see what we see from him and the rest of the team on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree.
Yep. All right. Well, that'll do it for us.